Quick note before we start. Today is the first day of my live Productive Garden Masterclass, and it's also opening day for new students in Dream to Garden, my best-selling online garden planting course that got a brand new overhaul this year. In this episode today, I'm going to be sharing a few real examples of what productive, well-planned gardens can look like. If you want to go deeper into these ideas that we're talking about today, you'll find links for the free masterclass and the limited time enrollment for Dream to Garden in the show notes. All right, let's get into it. Most home gardens get planted once, and then we cross our fingers and hope everything keeps producing as long as possible. But what if the same garden bed could intentionally give you 3 harvests in one season without adding more space, without planting nonstop, and without feeling behind all year? In today's episode, I'm going to share with you my favorite 3-season successions, real ones I use in my garden. We'll talk about cool season crops that finish earlier than most people expect, warm season crops that may not actually need to go out into the garden as early as we think, and fall crops that thrive when they follow the right plan, not just the right date. You'll hear how one bed can move from early greens into summer fruiting crops and finish strong in the fall, and why this only works when the decision is made now, before the season even starts. I'll also share with you mistakes that I used to make that I hear from a lot of people that they run into as well, like leaving crops in too long, planting the moment that you can instead of when you should, and waiting until a bed is completely empty before trying to decide what comes next. By the end of this episode, I want you looking at your garden as one continuous season instead of separate planting windows or even once, just that one-time summer garden. There is so much more that you can get out of your same space. You do not need more beds to get more production out of your garden, and I'm going to show you how. Before we jump into the first succession example, a quick word from our sponsor. If you're getting ready to start seeds, today's episode is sponsored by Organic Rev. They just released a new Superior Seed Starts bundle, and I love how simple they make seed starting. Each bundle is designed to improve germination and help seedlings get off to a strong, healthy start. Whether you're sowing in just a few trays or you're starting your entire spring garden from seed. I use Organic Rev in my own seed starting setup because it takes the guesswork out of feeding young plants when it matters the most. You can check out their new Superior Seed Start bundles at organicrev.com and use my code Jill10 to save 10% off of your order. When I say 3-season succession, that may be a new term for you, or maybe it's something that you've seen or you've heard me talk about, or maybe you're a current Dream to Garden student and you hear me talk about this a lot. Either way, you kind of wonder, what's this actually going to look at in my garden? And it's really pretty simple. You have the same space, maybe it's the same bed, maybe it's the same row, maybe it's the same container, maybe it's the same green stalk, but you plant different crops and it's intentionally planned. Here's what makes it work that sometimes we miss is that it's not just a matter of knowing when a plant goes in, like when should I plant, but it's also knowing about the right time that that plant comes out. Because if you know about the time that a certain plant is done harvesting, then you can make plans ahead of time to plant what comes next in that garden. So this isn't about planting more, because a lot of us as beginners especially, we just think if I want to expand my garden, I need to expand my space or build new raised beds. I mean, I've probably got over 20 right now, so I've totally been there. But instead, there's a different way to do it, and sometimes a better way, especially if you don't want to build multiple different raised beds or expand your garden space, especially if you don't have time to maintain all of it. Instead, we can get more production out of our garden by intentionally planning and letting one crop come out and making room for the next. Now, this is an idea that I'm diving deeper into and walking step by step through in today's free Productive Garden Masterclass. If you're listening to this today, if not, there are multiple options. So check out the link in the show notes for that. But let's look at some examples, because I think these examples can help you wrap your mind better around what this might potentially look like in your garden. And please understand that these are examples from my own garden. These are examples that I've actually used and continue to use. But sometimes the timing of this may depend on your location. Now, as far as location goes, I teach you how to figure all of this out yourself based on your climate in Dream to Garden. So keep in mind that some of this may need to be altered, but hopefully by seeing these examples, you can see the rhythm. And a lot of these probably will work out for you too, no matter where you're gardening from. So succession number 1 is going to be a bed or an area of spinach, followed by determinate tomatoes, followed by broccoli. Here's the thing about spinach is that most people don't realize that spinach is a crop that does not like warm weather. It's one of those people, who are in shorts and t-shirts when it snows. I have a neighbor boy who was like that this week. They're the ones that just kind of like it a little bit cooler. Spinach, in my experience, tends to start to go to seed or to bolt when temperatures are right around the sweet spot for me, like 75 degrees, sunny April day. And that's the thing about, and while we may be discouraged by that, especially if we planted spinach a little bit later than we should have, we actually can look at it as a really big opportunity. So the first thing you can plant in a specific garden space could potentially be spinach. Now, I mentioned when I typically see spinach bolting, it's normally when temperatures are around 75. Well, guess what loves going in the ground at that point? Spinach is a great crop to have tomatoes follow. You can take the spinach out when it starts to bolt, or you can do what I do sometimes. If I have a crop that's still hanging on and I really need to get that next crop in, especially if it's a leafy crop, I may just harvest a 6 to 9 foot diameter circle and then just stick the plant in the midst of it. Or if I need to plant the tomatoes and the spinach is still in there, then I'll just harvest a circle, plant the tomatoes into it, and then let the spinach hang on just a little bit longer. And that works out really well, and you're able to get that second crop in when you need to. But the reason I chose determinate tomatoes for this particular succession is because determinate tomatoes, like Romas, are ones that they grow to a set height, usually about 3 feet tall, and then they set all of their fruit in a short window, 2 to 3 weeks. Now, if you leave them in their garden, they might trickle out through the rest of the season, but for the most part, they produce a whole lot at one time, and then they're done. They're ideal for canning because they produce all at once. And if you want to grow determinate tomatoes, then this is a great opportunity because by the time that they all get harvested, it's about time to look at some of your early fall plantings like broccoli. For example, in my garden, if I plant spinach in February and then I plant determinate tomatoes in mid-April, those tomatoes are probably going to be done by the end of July, maybe early August. And then my broccoli will go in the garden in my area, zone 8A, but a lot of times broccoli is planted about the same time no matter where you are, in middle of August. So it's a perfect 3-season succession because spinach clears out earlier than most people expect. Tomatoes slide in at just the right time. They produce and then they're done. And then broccoli will come right in. Now, the great thing about broccoli is that it has similar plant spacing as tomatoes. So you can take the tomatoes out, put the broccoli in. You plant them at late summer. I would recommend that you add extra compost or slow release organic fertilizer at the time that you plant broccoli, because broccoli is a very heavy feeder and tomatoes will have already fed off of a lot of those nutrients in the soil. So definitely add some more fertility if you're going from heavy feeder to heavy feeder. But if you have a garden that already is well enriched with compost, then just a little bit of extra compost and maybe slow release fertilizer can help. But here's the thing that you can see. Instead of having one harvest, like this is my tomato bed, you're having 3 and you're not using any extra space. But the thing is that this particular example only works because the decision was made ahead of time. Because I'm starting my broccoli seeds indoors. So in order to have broccoli ready to transplant out on April 15th or so, I will have had to start them indoors like 6 weeks ahead of time. The same thing with broccoli. I can get broccoli transplants from the garden center in the fall where I'm at, but not all of you can, depending on where you're located. I've heard different things. So you may need to start broccoli seeds indoors. Well, you're going to be doing that while your tomatoes are having their heyday, probably the middle of July, early July maybe. So you're starting those indoors, knowing that once your tomatoes are done, your broccoli is going to be ready to go in and take its place. So this particular example wouldn't work without planning. Waiting until something is done sometimes will work depending on the succession that follows it. But in a lot of examples, it requires that planning so that you can know what to do ahead of time. Example number 2 is taking snap peas as a spring crop, following it with cucumbers, a summer crop, and then following it with carrots, a fall crop. Now, here are a couple of things that you may not know about these crops, especially if you're starting as a beginning gardener, is that snap peas are actually planted pretty early, about a month before your average last frost date. They germinate well in cooler soil. They may take a little longer, but they will germinate well. But when the temperatures get to around 85 or so, especially if it's humid or if you don't have any shade on them, they're going to stop producing. Mine, they're in my garden, you can just tell they just kind of fizzle and dry out. Like they are done. They do not like the heat. So snap peas in my garden will typically be done by the end of May, the beginning of June, even if I planted them in March, typically. So what I like to do right after snap peas is plant cucumbers. Now you may be thinking, okay, cucumbers, but your average last frost date is in April. Why are you waiting till June? Here's the thing, is that cucumbers as a warm season crop, if you direct sow those seeds in the garden in late May, early June, whenever your snap peas come out, that soil is warm, those seeds will sprout quickly, and that crop will grow really fast. Compare that to a cucumber planting that you're trying to plant as soon as the frost date passes, April 15th or so for me, that soil is still kind of cool. So they may have a little bit harder time germinating quickly. It may take a little bit longer. And let's say you have a late season cold snap, cucumbers do not like that at all. And so by delaying them, you're actually getting them a little bit better of a start. And then also peas as a legume will fix some nitrogen into the soil, which helps cucumbers with their growth. Now, cucumbers technically are going to go until frost. I have not found that to always be the case. I found that there's a point with they produce quite a bit, but then they just start kind of slowing down. A lot of times, especially later in the summer, disease starts taking them. Carrot diseases are, in my experience and in the research that I've done, a little bit more prominent later in the summer. So most likely that cucumber plant's probably going to start aging, but by probably mid-August or so, this will be a good time to look at what's going to follow those cucumbers. And I like carrots for this. Now, there's a couple ways that you can do this. The first thing is to plant carrot seeds underneath the shade of the cucumbers. And this is going to help the carrot seeds germinate when it's really hot outside. The soil is probably getting not irrigated super well, or it's actually drying out. So you need to increase your irrigation. But it can benefit from the shade of the cucumber plant until it germinates. Now, after the carrots germinate and after they, when they start getting established, that their roots are where they can take up the moisture and all of that, this will be the time to start thinking about taking out the cucumbers, because eventually, probably in around September or so, those carrots need to have full sun to be able to grow well. And I know that's hard to imagine, but I've done a side-by-side test. The ones that are shaded more of the fall don't size up as well. So you need to take the cucumbers out. Now, the way that you would take the cucumbers out is by snipping the vine at the soil level. You don't want to pull it all up, because then you could disturb the roots of the carrots that are growing right beside it. But this would allow you a couple more weeks to be able to have cucumbers in your garden, that small little overlap there. And again, like example number 1, instead of having one harvest, like this is my cucumber bed, you've got 3. You've got snap peas, cucumbers, and then you're rolling right into fall with your carrots. And again, you didn't use any extra space. And also, snap peas and cucumbers can both use the same trellis. This is another reason I like planting them one after the other is that snap peas or any kind of peas really, but I'm using snap peas because snap peas will harvest quicker. They can use the same trellis, so it's a perfect pairing. And here's the reason that this works, and some of the mistakes that I've made in the past that I realized that I could overcome and make this work. The first thing is that sometimes, and I think we all struggle with this as gardeners, sometimes we really struggle with taking plants out once they have reached their peak and they're kind of on the downgrade. And what I've noticed is that anytime that I decide, okay, it's time to pull it, or these are just more trouble than they're worth, I never regret it. Being able to have a fresher start, put things in that's a newer crop. And that's going to be the case, especially with snap peas. If they just start trickling because of the heat, and cucumbers, if they start having disease issues, take them out, put the next one in. And I know that's hard to do, especially the first time, but by doing this, you're able to get more harvest. And again, like I said before, just because cucumbers can be planted around your last frost date doesn't mean that you have to, especially with this particular crop, and they might actually benefit from a bit of a delay. Now, let me give you a real life example. Yes, I will follow snap peas with cucumbers, but the late May, early June cucumber planting is not my first. And that's another thing is what I do with my cucumbers is I will have an early planting because I want cucumbers pretty quickly for my salads because the lettuce is going to be there and I want to have them together. So I'll have an early planting of cucumbers somewhere else in my garden, but that second succession is the one that's going to follow snap peas. So I can continue having fresh cucumbers and not really even have to worry about the diseases too much because I know I'm going to have a new planting coming along. And again, all of that requires planting my first cucumber planting and then planting that second one behind snap peas. This mindset shift and knowing how to plan some of these things that I teach you exactly how to do for your own climate in Dream to Garden, my online garden planning course. It's built around this, seeing that you have a whole season ahead of you, not just one time that you're going to plant. Now, I'm going to share one more succession with you today, but first, a word from our sponsor. If you're looking to start your season this year without the overwhelm by getting some key infrastructure things in place, Garden in Minutes is the way to go. They're a family-owned company, and their goal is to make gardening easier, not harder, by designing products that remove the guesswork, they save time, and they reduce your physical effort. Their raised garden bundles are perfect for getting started. You get a modular metal raised bed, their top-rated garden grid watering system, and a manifold, all designed to fit and function seamlessly together. This means no more second-guessing parts, no extra trips to the store, and no complicated setup, which I love. I've had my garden grids for years, and even through tough Arkansas winters or blazing hot Arkansas summers, they are still going strong. Once they're installed, watering is hands-off, and you know your plants are getting even more moisture right at the soil level. Whether you're a new gardener or you're returning after a break, Garden in Minutes gives you confidence, not complexity. And if you already love your setup, they've got timers, custom hoses, and tomato cages that make gardening even easier. I love every single product I have from Garden in Minutes, and I know you will too. You can go to journeywithjill.net/gardeninminutes, and we'll also have the link in the show notes, and use the code Jill as a podcast listener, and you can get 7% off of your order. Again, journeywithjill.net/gardeninminutes and use promo code Jill. Succession number 3 is going to be a spring crop of lettuce, a summer crop of peppers, and a fall crop of garlic. This is a really long 3-season plan, but it's one of my favorites. Lettuce, as we've talked about recently, gives you an early spring start. It gives you an early spring amount of salad greens, but lettuce, you've probably had this experience if you've grown lettuce before, lettuce does start to turn bitter and it does start to bolt when the temperatures get warmer. Thankfully, they have a little bit more of a cushion than spinach does. Spinach for me typically bolts about April. Lettuce, I'm starting to see some of the bolting and bitterness in May. But here's the thing is that when lettuce typically is triggered to bolt, this is about the same time that peppers love to be planted. So you could follow lettuce with peppers, or there's another strategy that I like even better is I intentionally plan and have lettuce every other square. Like if I'm planting in my Garden in Minutes garden grids, that's a square foot gardening like layout automatically. I'm doing lettuce in every other square because I know I'm going to be putting peppers in the alternate squares. You can do this with other ones. I do it with carrots as well. I really like carrots with peppers for this as well. But the point is that you do it every other square, and then you can plant peppers in between your lettuce. And then as the peppers start to grow, they can shade the lettuce just a little bit and hopefully give them a little bit more time. So that's another thing that you can do. That kind of mixes the whole succession planting and companion planting thing. But if you don't want to get into that, you can just plant your lettuce, and then when they start to get bitter, then put your peppers in. By doing the companion planting that I mentioned before, by leaving an extra space, that just allows you to get your peppers in just a little bit sooner. But if you don't want to worry about that, you can just do one after the other. And peppers are just going to continue to grow until about your frost. And peppers are one of those that a lot of times they really hit their stride the later in the season and they start producing a whole lot. And so for the most part, they are going to produce until frost. And this makes this a perfect succession of garlic, because garlic is planted around your average first frost date, right around when you get your first frost. So you've got peppers who are not going to survive a frost, and garlic that's planted at the frost. And so that's a perfect planting there, so you know when you're going to get your garlic in. So you take your peppers out, you put your garlic in. It's perfect. And you see, again, with this third example, you don't need more beds. You just need better timing and planning ahead of time. And hopefully you'll be able to see these examples. You've got decisions that you've made early. You know exactly which bed you're going to plant what, not only for the first planting, but for all three plantings. The crops that you choose, you not only choose the first planting date, but you know when they're going to come out. And so you have confidence in what you're planting instead of scrambling, like, when am I going to get this in? Where am I going to put it? You already have that mapped out. But the thing is, you don't have to do this all at once, because if hearing these successions make you think, okay, I can see this, how this works, but I want to understand the bigger picture, how these components actually come together, the Productive Garden Masterclass, which is happening today, is your next step. Now, in this class, I'm going to show you how productive gardens actually work across the entire season, the key planting decisions that allow you to harvest longer, that allow you to avoid wasted space, keep you from having to weed all season long, because we're making decisions that's going to help with that. And stop feeling that you're always planting too late, or you're not sure if you're planting at the right time, because it's about understanding the why behind successions like these, so they don't feel complicated or overwhelming. They feel more like a puzzle that you can easily put together because you know where the pieces go. And to make this class even more fun, everyone who registers for it will be entered to win a big bundle of garden products from some of my favorite companies like Organic Rev, Garden in Minutes you've heard about today, Greenstock Gardening, Epic Gardening. You'll be registered to win a big prize package just for registering for the masterclass. But in the masterclass itself, we're also going to have some live giveaways during the class from those same products, the same products that I love. So I hope you'll join me in that. And then if you want help applying what we've talked about today to your specific garden, to your beds, to your timing, to your climate, to your crops, Dream to Garden opens today. This is where I teach you how to map it all out step by step in your garden, and you can put it into practice. You'll find all the details for both the free masterclass and Dream to Garden in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this episode inspired you. Honestly, it was hard to just pick 3 examples. There are so many to choose from and so many different combinations that I have used in my own garden throughout the years. But once you learn the concepts, like I will be sharing in the masterclass, growing a 3-season garden will become second nature to you. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll talk with you again next week. And just a reminder, if seed starting is part of your season, the new Superior Seed Starts bundles from Organic Rev are designed to support your plants from the moment they germinate all the way until transplant. Instead of guessing what the seedlings need at each stage, these bundles give you a simple, coordinated way to encourage faster germination, steadier growth, and stronger transplants so your plants are actually ready when it is time to move them into the garden. This kind of start makes everything else easier, especially when timing matters. You can find the Superior Seed Start bundles at organicrev.com and use my code Jill10 to save 10% off of your order.